hit and record on this one as well, just because I know we've got a couple people that aren't able to join us. And let's see, I gotta get to where we need to be. Open up a few things here.
Hey Matt, I didn't do my homework.
That's it. You're gonna have to stay after and write. I will do my homework on the board.
Yeah.
1,000 times. Okay, so yeah, just as of the end of the last meeting, our homework was to actually go through and create. Let's see. The assignment was to create user-defined measures that will include all the materials needed for an install for all allowable ECMs, and to go through one entire audit and complete itemized work orders for every measure. So, and I'll tell you guys, I did do this, but I didn't do this, but I don't have a complete list of materials, so I don't really have the ability to do that. Was anybody able to do that? And like, what did you guys learn? Was it, you feel like it's going to work? Did you run into any problems? Or are you guys still kind of in the middle of it? Or are you all like Greg and you didn't get it done? I assume from your silence that none of you got it done. Is that correct? And I have no audio on any of you guys, so if any of you are responding, then oh, I got a yes from Jesse Chambers, but I'm not sure what the yes was to. Give me some feedback, guys. Let me know where you're at so I know how to move forward on today's meeting.
Yeah,
we're still working on ours, Matt.
I don't know why it won't show up.
Oh, it's not even showing me at all for that one?
Yeah, so.
Was it on the wrong?
All right, so I heard from, was that Bragg that's still working on yours?
Housing Authority.
Housing Authority, okay. You guys
yeah, Bragg, we haven't done much either,
okay.
Hence our production.
Gotcha. All right, well, so, oh, and the other thing, so today the goal is to kind of get through this whole process, kind of wrap it up, and then I was going to have Ian on to answer any questions. Ian had a mandatory meeting that he was not able to miss, so he's not going to join us today. But my goal is still to kind of get through this process here. I feel like we're pretty close. I think we can, I want to talk about this, about going through an entire audit and kind of doing the itemized work order part. And with that, so we're going to go through the work orders, we're going to cost them all out, and then we're going to make sure that we assign all the appropriate funding sources, and that should kind of complete the report. And then I think, and you guys tell me, and I'll ask you this question again at the end. Like, you tell me if this has been sufficient, or if there are still some holes in this and stuff that we still need to cover. If there is, we can discuss further meetings. But if not, I feel like we've kind of gone through the whole process. What I'd like the next step after today's meeting to be is that basically sometime within the next 2 weeks, so we'll set a date. But sometime in the next 2 weeks, I'd like each agency to go through this and then send me a copy of one of your jobs that you've completed this on. And really all of this is just moving us to where we will be ready to, because as of not only on November 1st, everything turned in after that has to have all the new fields turned in, but also November 1st is the date that I'd like to set to where basically every job you do after that is going to have this client completion report in it. So anyway, so during the next couple of weeks, I'd like to start getting them from you guys. I'll review them. I think I'm going to learn more in the process. You guys are going to learn a little bit more as well. But anyway, that's kind of what I was seeing going forward. Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns about that now? If not, let's get into the audit, and I'll just show you. I just kind of muddled through the rest of like closing out or going through this whole file. So if I can get the audit to come up on the right screen. Okay, so as of the end of the last meeting, we had generated work orders, and we had gone through some of the measures on the work order. Let me get to it. So on the measures tab, I think we had gone through our ASHRAE. Whoops, I guess this would be the wrong work order for that. So our ASHRAE work order, we'd gone through this measure, and we had basically made an itemized list of every material that went into this work order. And we have our estimated stuff, and then we hit copy, and by hitting copy, it made us actual, it just copied over all of our estimated stuff over to the actual. And then we made some adjustments to our actual, and down here in the bottom, it changed. So our estimated cost was $330.96, and our actual turned out to be $326.38. So we kind of got through that with a couple. I think this measure, we may have done it with one other measure. I don't remember. Is everybody comfortable with how to do that? Or does anybody have any questions about what you need to do there? Or did anybody learn anything that would be helpful for the rest of the group?
I feel good about it.
All right. Okay, so we've done that with one measure. Now the goal is to do that with every measure. So, and what I found I did, oops, my gosh, I'm doing some weird things here. This box. So I had one measure on my work order for my electrician, which was just my ASHRAE. So, and then I have a work order for just weatherization stuff, and I have an HVAC work order. However many work orders you guys generated, let's take a few minutes now and go through each of them, and let's kind of put an actual cost on them. Now, if you do not have, if you don't have your whole library of measures put in there, it's okay. You can kind of do what I did. So for example, on my HVAC stuff, all I did was I came in here, and I have a smart thermostat on my HVAC work order. I don't, you may not ever do that as an HVAC work order, but that's what I did for the example. And all I did was I hit copy on these two line items, and it's got the thermostat and it's got labor. And then just take a look at it, and on some of the measures, do your estimated and your actual costs exactly the same. And on some of the other measures, make sure that your actual cost is different than what you estimated, so that when we run this report, you can start to look and see what it does. But by doing that, I now have my estimated and my actual. And the other thing that I notice is you want to make sure that you are showing labor for every one of these things. So if you guys will start doing that, go through what you have on your whatever the job you guys have been working on your desktops, and make sure you have actual costs, actual quantities, and actual costs for every one of your work orders, for every measure on every work order.
So Matt,
Yeah.
on the labor part,
Yes.
are you saying like after we get done with the job, you want us to put the actual labor hours in there to be more accurate? Is that what you're wanting?
Yes, and that's so as we have moved toward this, that labor thing has been the biggest elephant in the room. We have known for years that none of us report labor. We've also known for years that if we do begin to report labor, it is going to make a mess of things. But this is where we actually want you guys to start reporting labor.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem for us because, like, especially Windows right now, because, like, we got Tyson, he's still kind of learning.
Yeah,
So, like, Windows right now could take us longer, and it could blow our SIR if I do that.
yeah. Now, as we start this out, don't fudge the numbers. We really want you guys to just put in your real labor. And that, like, great example, not only do you have a new guy that may take a little longer, but you guys also may not have very good a method of figuring out, okay, what was the labor on each one of these measures? Because that's the other problem that this is going to create is you now have to start reporting like, well, I went to the job for a day and a half, but how much of my time was spent doing the smart thermostat and how much of my time was spent doing the windows and so forth. So,
Well, I have a question. Along those same lines. What do we do if that is the case? We go do the job and then we no longer have an SIR after we put in all our labor.
So basically, we have to, every job we turn into DOE, we have to show that it's cost effective. So honestly, if you run this and it blows your SIR, then we really need to fix it. What I want you guys to do to fix it is you're going to have to shuffle your labor around a little bit. So, you went to a job for a day and a half and say it took 5 hours to put the windows in and then you spent the rest of the time on other things. Well, if 5.5 hours of labor blows your SIR, you may have to dial it back to 4 hours so that it shows you have an SIR. But you also need to go into your setup library and you need to adjust what your labor cost is on your windows. That way, next time you run your audit, you'll be estimating more accurately, and then you won't have the problem. On the next house, the windows won't pay back if it's really taking 5.5 hours to, install them. So yes, you are going to have to put your thumb on the scale a little bit and kind of level stuff out, but I would really recommend that you track the actual time as accurately as you possibly can, and then take a
Matt.
look at it. Yeah.
I also want to just verify this labor should also include driving to the supply house and picking up the windows and loading insulation trucks and all that too, right?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is no. I think you can charge, I've been under the assumption for years, and we've never actually crossed this line, so we're going to have to answer it, but I think you can charge all your time driving just a regular program. So as we get this started, count your labor as labor on the job. And so if you're paying, I think that'll work, won't it? Because if you're paying somebody, you're going to end up paying that guy, for X number of hours anyway. But it's okay that some of his hours are not, if you looked at the books, you wouldn't be able to say, well, every single hour that I paid that guy for has been accounted for on a job, because there's a lot of their time that they're not actually on the job. So just charge the time when they're on the job doing the measure, itemize that. Will that work?
Okay. Yep.
And it is legitimate to charge the other time just to regular program costs. So, because it is
So
the
you
cost
want-
of the program.
You want this to show on November? You want this to be part of November's new thing?
So yes, so any job that you turn in after November 1st, you're going to have to fill out all the new fields on the BWR. In addition to that, any job that you turn in as a completion after November 1st, I would like it to have the client completion report in the file. And to help you be ready so that hopefully those ones that you turn in after the 1st, like they are actually, the client completion report is accurate, we're going to start running client completion reports this month. So basically, start doing this right now. But if you have a pile of jobs you've got to turn in, every single one of them you turn in this month does not have to. Make sure that you're spending the time with this client completion report and that you're set up and ready so that you can run the report next month for everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, the other thing that was interesting as I went through this, so look at your windows. If you've got a measure for windows, find that measure. And if you don't have windows, then I can just show you what's going on. So on my low E windows, whoops, I missed it. The way that I set up my windows in my setup library was I didn't use the labor. And I noticed that method could be a little problematic here. So under my windows, where the heck are my low E windows? Replace. Windows ceiling. Oh, this is MHEA, that's why. So my low E windows on my costs. So I've put in my setup library, I have $0 in windows, $0 in labor, and then I use the other section to basically just say, like, this is my labor and materials. On average, it's costing $40 or $60 or something like that to install a window. That's what I told all of you to do for a very long time, or at least recommended that you do. I think a lot of you are doing this. You may want to go back in and change this to where maybe you have your labor as, $40 here, and then your other stuff as $20. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm not going to change that. And the reason why is because if you don't put any labor in your windows, then when you do the client completion report, it's going to show, it thinks all that the $40 per window is all materials. And so it doesn't put any money in the labor column. And so when you run the report, it looks like you had no labor to install the windows, which is usually not the case. And since this report's going to be a good way to show exactly what our labor costs were for the job, we're going to want to represent the labor on the labor tab. What I did here, so so when I got to this measure, it has windows, labor, and other, and it showed, so my low E windows were 0. In fact, I need to delete this one. So I'm going to delete this, and let me just zero this stuff out, and I'll show you what I did on this one. So right now, this is probably what some of your measures would look like if you haven't hit the copy button or you haven't come in here and itemized your actual costs. So I had my estimated costs per window, and then these had a payback on them. And it looks like I had no other, oh, I shouldn't have deleted what I deleted. My miscellaneous cost, that was the $1,500. That that was my windows that showed up in my let me go to the audit. So on the audit, on the windows, we put in all the windows, but we put in this extra $250. That miscellaneous thing that I just deleted, which I should not have, that was the $250. So if you have that, do you guys have that in yours? Do you guys have windows paying back on yours at all?
Yeah, we do.
All right. Does it show up as miscellaneous cost? Or
Hold on one second. I gotta pull one up.
on this one? Yeah, I think it was that. And there was 4 of them at like $250 or something. Something like, it looked like that, maybe. Anyway, when I came into this measure, this is kind of what it looked like. I have my windows at 0, have my labor at 0 estimated, but then I had that other, because I have like 40, oh, I think this was for 6 windows. Yeah, that's right. So I had that other came in at, there were 6 windows that paid back, and I have just a $40 cost per window, so that's $240. And then my miscellaneous, which was actually the cost of each window, comes in there at $1,500. So if I do this, if I run the report just like this, and say I copy, well, before I run the report, I need my actual. So say I just copied over these 2 things, and I said that was actually the real cost. It was $1,740. If I run the client completion report, with that in it, then it's going to show, right here we have a cost summary by work order, by measure. So my low E windows are showing I have $1,740 in materials and $0 in labor. And that's not really accurate because I had put my labor in there. So probably the best way to do it is go back and change your setup libraries to have your labor on the labor line for the windows. But for right now, if you just want to, you know, if you don't do that or you just want to fix it right now, what you can do is on that work order, I'm just going to add some labor in. So this is my actual side of things. So I'm going to copy over the labor, and then I'm going to edit it. So I'm going to say I actually had 6 windows, and my labor on each window was $30. And then I did have 6 windows with other materials and stuff, but I could just change, like if I added up all the materials on that job, let's say that all of the screws and the caulk and everything ended up costing like $34.32. So I'm just going to put in the quantity of 1. I'm going to say $34.32, and that'll be for the caulk and screws. That's it. So now it has adjusted. So now I have the labor included. So I paid $180 in labor. And that's the other thing. You've got to, whatever they report, you're going to have to adjust to reflect the actual labor. And a lot of times you can really just change this to quantity of 1, and you could just put in the dollar amount. So if your actual labor was really only $171, you know, we'll just go 171, and that's our labor. So we still have our estimated stuff over here, and we got our actual stuff here. And then each window cost us $250. If you need to go in and again, like if once you get your window bill, if it was different, say the window bill was like $14.78. Let's just change this to 1 at $14.78. So now we have our actual real cost of everything. And it's showing our estimated was $17.40, our actual is $16.83.32. And then if we go look at the client completion report for that, which is, oh, right here. Now, if I look at that column, now it's showing my materials for windows were $15, $12, and 32 cents because it was a windows plus caulk and screws. Had 171 in labor, and the total was that. And then the next thing we got to do is we got to figure out where we're charging all that. So, does that make sense on the windows? Are you guys able to do some of those costs for some of your different measures?
Yeah, I'm just a little worried about just going over the SAR now.
Yeah, well, and that's the nice thing is when you do this, it will actually show your adjusted SIR, right?
Yeah, I was playing around with that.
And so, and the only wiggle room you have is on labor, but if you want to create a long-term problem for yourself, just keep fudging the labor and don't ever go into your setup library and actually fix the problem. But really the whole point is as you get into this, if you start having measures that your SIR is way over, then take a look at that labor, or if you have other costs that you just weren't thinking about and it's really killing your SIR, you got to go into your setup library and change the way you're estimating this so that it more closely reflects the real cost. And then, you know, a few months down the road, when you're doing this, your estimated and your actual, you should get to a point where you're not going over the SIR. Is that reasonable, or am I up in the night on that one?
I feel like I'm going to need more time with this. Like, I feel like November might be a little too close.
Well, so every job you turn in November needs to have this in there. I'm not saying it has to be perfect by then, but I want you to start having it in the job, because basically the longer we wait, the longer we push this out, it'll just get put off is really why I'm setting that as a deadline. So.
Okay.
And so Ian was the first one to do this, and last year Ian had 3 jobs that I monitored where the SIR he was over the SIR and measures. But he paid for them with the right funding sources. He didn't pay for those measures that went over the SIR. He did not pay for them with DOE. And so we just noted it on the monitoring. We noted that we were working towards improving the program, and that we just continue to watch that as he improves that. And that was it. Like it wasn't an issue on the monitoring other than we just recorded what was going on. So that's kind of what I anticipate with everybody. Like if something goes over on the SIR, you can move your labor around a little bit if you want to try and correct it. But really, for the first little while, if you want to, you could just report it exactly what it costs. But you got to make sure not to pay for anything. If you blow the SIR and anything, do not pay for it with DOE, and we'll be okay for a little while. And we'll get to that here in a second. So are you guys doing that right now? Or you're going through your measures? Make sure all of your measures have actual costs on them. And for like on some of these, put in some real numbers so that it messes with your SIR a little bit. But on others, like on other measures, just make sure, just kind of hit copy. Like on the replacement door, I think I just hit copy, so it was like the same cost on both sides of things. But go through and make sure you have actual costs on every one of your measures, and then let me know when you've got that done. And make sure you've done that for every one of your work orders. So someone from Housing Authority asked, we have our contractors measure our windows. He charges us for these measurements. Where is the best place to put this cost? We currently divide that measurement cost between all the windows in the additional cost. I'd be fine if you divide it. I'd be fine if you just added another line, like on your windows. For, you know, really the whole goal is just to show this was the actual cost of the measure. So on that, let's see, that's a door. We get back to the windows. So on the Windows tab here, if you needed to, you could just add another line and, you know, put, whether it's construction hardware or if it was labor, you know, you're going to create something that will represent that, and you'll just say, you know, this was labor, and you'd say this was our weatherization crew, and it was to measure the windows, and you just put that on there. Now, what do you guys do for when the guy goes out and measures? Are you only have a measure them if they audit? Is that correct?
We have a flat rate that we pay him for all the windows, so whether he measures 1 or measures 6, it's just a flat rate all the way through.
Gotcha. When do you decide to send him out? Does it have to first look like it's going to pay back on the audit, or do you guys just use them to measure every single house?
So we run the NEAT, and then whatever windows pay back, we have a measure, and then we put those actual costs in. If it kicks them off, so we know we're safe. So we've been splitting it between each window just so because if we do it through the work order like this, it puts us at a risk of blowing the SIR, doesn't it? Rather than if we keep it inside.
Yeah, well, and yeah. I suppose you could, let me look at the
and I guess if you wanted to see it, we could later deduct it from the work order and create a measure for it, but I feel like it might be safer to keep it inside the NEAT, like the actual run the report. That way we don't have the risk of blowing the SIR.
Yeah, you want, if it's a real cost for the job, you want it represented there. And that's, I think you're pretty safe to have it included in the cost of your windows. Is that what you're doing right now?
Yeah, we just divide it. If there's 6 windows, we'll divide that flat rate cost between the 6.
Gotcha. Just remember, whenever you're doing that, if this number here represents more than just the cost of the window, you got to make a note down here. So we have something there that say additional cost includes window measurement fee or something.
Okay, and then when we get to the work order, would you like us to later then deduct it from any additional cost section here and create a line item so it's easier to see?
No, I'd be fine, because really the goal is to get, everybody needs to sit down at the end of the job and say, what did this actually cost us, and show that it still had an SIR. And
okay,
so all I'd be looking for is, I'd be like, okay, now I have actual costs, and I have actual costs for materials and labor. So if I went through your invoices for this job, I would find that there was an invoice from your contractor for $1,478, and that invoice included a measurement fee. It included, you know, all of the windows. Anyway, it would the invoice itself will be the record for the breakdown on that, or should be the record for it. So
okay,
you guys it would really be like your labor. That may be a labor because you guys buy your windows, don't you?
yeah.
Okay. You guys buy the windows, the contractor provides the labor.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So you could really put all of that under labor, and then just there would be an invoice for the labor. So, and yeah, so really as I've gone through this, I think you guys can itemize this section as detailed as you want or as minimized as you want. What I would be looking for, so if I went to, say, this other measure where I'm showing that the door includes, it was $60 in labor and $185 for materials. And if that materials includes a door and a new combo lock, then I should be able to go into either your inventory list or your, some itemized receipt. I should be able to add up the cost of the door and the new combo lock, and it should come to exactly $185.00. So all this is that you guys are actually sitting down and saying the actual cost of this measure was this many dollars and this many pennies, and so much of it went to labor and the other of it is materials. And then we'd look at the total of all of it, and it should match all the receipts and all the invoices. So if it helps to do what we did on the ASHRAE measure, where we itemized every single thing, you pulled everything out of your inventory, do it that way. I think that would probably be the easiest way, even though it feels like the hardest way right now, if you had your system set up. But I don't know, like you guys, each of you have different inventory management stuff and different ways you're doing stuff, so find what works for you. How are you guys coming? Anybody getting close to having all their measures with an actual cost? Let me know when you get there.
You only want the ones that have SIRs, right? You don't care about the health and safeties and all that.
Go ahead and put an actual cost in for all of them. And if you just have to copy it over on a lot of them, just do that. But let's put an actual cost in for all of them so that you can run your report and see what it looks like completed.
Okay, I got mine.
All right.
So now the biggest concern I have though is I feel like I'm gonna need more time to kind of get an idea of labor though, because like especially the guys down south right now, all three of them are working on their own houses, and like their labor is gonna be different for all of them.
Does anybody have any suggestions on how to track labor?
I was going to ask the same thing.
All right. Was that Burrow?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Like I can have them keep track of their time and just inputting it like into the individual jobs. I'm just with the whole SIR, that's what I'm worried about, because like one of them might take longer than the other to do something.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to go back into my measures and change that cost into my setup library,
You're going to want to look at it over more than just one job.
yeah, I'm going to need more time. I'm going to need more time to kind of get a better history.
Yeah.
To get an idea, to get more accurate, because right now, I already can tell you right now, if I go into our jobs right now and put the actual labor costs, our SIRs are going to blow. So,
And if that is the case, it could be a couple of things going on. On one hand, DOE could argue that that measure really didn't pay back and you shouldn't be doing it. Now, if you feel strongly that it's a temporary thing and it's a training thing, then you'll want to train that guy and get him to where he's able to do it more quickly so that that measure does pay back. And I'm totally fine if you pay for that measure with LIHEAP for a little while you're training somebody. But the reality is DOE basically saying, look, we have a rule that says you can't install any measure unless it is cost effective, and that includes materials and labor. And that's this. It's something we've known for a long time. We haven't really wanted to address it, but we finally decided to go ahead and go down this road because we feel like it will improve your programs. I feel like there will be some things you'll find, whoa, wait a second. In reality, this is really never cost effective, and we're going to audit it that way, and we're going to show the real labor associated, and now it's never going to pay back, and you're going to stop doing that measure. But I feel like there are some other measures where it's like, okay, we're blowing the SIR just a little bit here, but we feel like we can get better at this, and so you can make some internal improvements and get back on track. I hope. I realize that's some of that might be a little wishful thinking, but I expect we'll see some of that happening.
So if you enter your cost into the work order and you end up blowing the SIR, do you go back into the NEAT and add those actual costs, and then if it didn't pay back, it kind of reshuffles your NEAT, doesn't it?
That is the problem, yeah. Well, and if you go into if you put this on this closeout report and it blows your SIR, you wouldn't want to go back into the NEAT, because the NEAT not only would the NEAT reshuffle the deck, but it's going to show you what you already know. It no longer pays back. So it would drop that measure right off the list, but you already did it, right? So
correct.
If it blows the SIR here on the closeout report, for the next couple of months, just fill this out and look at what your real labor is. And just leave it alone. Don't try to fudge it. Just look at your actual labor. And then the next step, we're gonna talk about the funding source, and let's just make sure that we pay for any of those measures that go over the SIR with LIHEAP. And if we can go for a couple of months just paying for those measures with LIHEAP and see what we can learn about our labor and make some of those adjustments after we've got a few jobs under our belts, then we should be able to go into our setup library at that point and kind of make some tweaks to how we're estimating it. Would that work?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I was trying to find an example for you guys from Salt Lake, but I can't find one right now. What they do, though, to track their labor is they just use the work order. Gosh. So, like, I've got, here's my work order. I'm going to preview it. They take this work order out in the field with them. And whoever's installing these measures, it's his or her responsibility to fill out this section right here. So they'd go out and they'd say, okay, infiltration reduction. Well, and what they end up doing is they'll write down all the materials that they use down here in the field notes. And then on the labor, they'll put in like, sorry, I've been pointing down here. It's actually over here. These are normally blank. Since I filled them out, they have numbers in them, but normally they're blank. But they'll actually put on the labor, they'll put how many hours they actually worked on that measure. So they're required at the end of each day to fill this out just by hand, with a pen or a pencil. And then they hand this back to the office. And then the person in the office takes that information and they actually type it in, just exactly what you guys are doing right now. They'll fill it in and then it shows up here in the actual costs. So that might be a quick way to start tracking labor. You may find some more efficient way to do it. I don't know. But how's everybody coming? Has everybody at least got most of their measures put in or actual costs for, at least a few of them?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So if you'll look at your client completion report now, I got too many windows open here. So client information. So I'm going to preview my client completion report. And so this first thing just shows work history. It just has a list of all the work orders, right? The next page has the cost summary by work order by measure. And so it's going to break down my first work order is up here. So my weatherization work order. Then I have my electric work order, and then I have my HVAC work order. And you can see that I actually have materials and labor for everything. But again, down here for my infiltration reduction, I put zeros in there, so I got nothing in there. And what we'd want to see when you print this report out is we want to see actual costs for materials. So there shouldn't be any zeros here, and there shouldn't be any zeros in the labor column. The other thing, though, is you want to make sure that you have the funding source assigned for every one of these. So there shouldn't be any blanks here. And so that's the next thing that we'll do. But you can see I'm missing some I don't have my funding sources for either of these work orders either. So let's go in and fill those in real quick. For you guys, fill them in for some of your stuff or all of your stuff, whatever works for you. So I'm going to go to work order number 1. And the way to fill this in, so I think you can you can by default fill them in if you want on the where was it? Oh, back on the audit. So if I go to the audit and on the measures right here, you can fill all those in before you create your work orders. So if you put the cost center in before you create your work orders, then it will automatically put those same cost centers in on all the work orders. We did not do that, so I actually went in afterwards and I put in all these numbers. And then when I went back to my work orders, since I had already generated them, it didn't work. But if you know that every single time you pull a certain material off the shelf, it's always going to get charged to a certain program, then you may use something like this. But it's probably more accurate that you actually just go in to each work order and look at each measure and think about how you're going to pay for each one of those measures. And remember, if you actually put in a dollar amount for your cost centers or for each of those contracts, then you can kind of keep tabs on where you're at with those contracts. It's not perfect because in addition to these itemized costs, your agency is also going to be charging, you know, the time it took to run to the hardware store and other things like that to the contracts. But anyway, but if you actually put dollar amounts for the cost centers in, it'll kind of help you to keep on track with how much is left in each one of them. But so what we're going to do is we're going to come into each of our measures. So open up your work order, go to the measures tab again, and then you're looking at the cost center, and you want to make sure that you've assigned a cost center for every single measure. And I'm going to scroll through. I already put mine in. I'm going to scroll through until I get to one or two that don't have one. So here I had building insulation, and I need to assign a cost measure or a cost center. And as Brad mentioned earlier, it's probably best if you assign both the labor and the material to the same cost center. In fact, I don't know how you'd split it out here. I'm not sure how I think you could possibly, there's got to be a way to do it. I just don't know how to do it. But anyway, so you want to look at this and say, well, you know, which cost center do I want to charge this particular measure to? So this measure, building insulation, was an energy conservation measure. So I'm going to charge it to either DOE program support or LIHEAP program support. Those are my only two options there because it's an energy conservation measure. Now, if I blew my SIR, then I'm going to make sure and charge it to LIHEAP. In this case, I didn't blow my SIR, and I got plenty of DOE money, so I'm going to go ahead and charge it to DOE. And then I'll go to my next one. My next one was doors and windows. This one, I got close to going over my SIR, but I didn't exceed it, so I'm okay. So I could still charge this one to LIHEAP, or I could still charge this one to DOE without any problems. Oops, and then my next measure, doors and windows as well. My SIR looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and charge that one to DOE. And then my windows, my SIR, I actually spent less than I had estimated, so I'm no danger of going over my SIR, my DOE program, or I charge this one to DOE. So make sure you've got every single measure has a cost center associated with it, and then I'm going to go back to, I got to go check on my other work orders.
You charged your foundation insulation to DOE Health and Safety?
Oh, did I? Good catch. That's not a good thing to do, is it? I picked the wrong thing out of the list. Thanks for that. So my ASHRAE fan, what am I going to charge that to? What questions would you guys ask yourselves about this ASHRAE fan? So it's a health and safety measure, right? So I am going to charge it to one of my health and safety budgets. Before I charge it to DOE Health and Safety, what do you want to know?
Need a DOE approved SIR.
Yeah, have I charged some other measure, some other energy conservation measure to DOE? If I haven't, then that looks bad. Since I charged a few of them to DOE, then I can charge this one to DOE as well, and there's no questions asked. If I'm running low on DOE money, I have a LIHEAP Health and Safety budget, I could charge that, right? But either way, this is where you're actually documenting where you're charging each of these measures to. using this report. And then my smart thermostat, I'm going to make sure I'm charging that to the right thing. If this was, say this was like a furnace or something, and you were going to pay for it with Dominion or Crisis, this is, you know, you just select that cost center here. I don't think we, do we ever use Dominion money for thermostats? I don't know. Is it allowable? I don't know if it's allowable. I'm going to put it on Dominion just so you can see on the report how it shows up. But
We use a Dominion as a furnace replacement. We'll use the thermostat on it.
yeah, I could see that. I could see it working if we needed it to, but in general, you'd probably just charge that to DOE or LIHEAP since it has an SIR. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to put it there. So hopefully you guys are doing some of this as well on each of your computers, but I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to run that client completion report now. So same thing, it just has a list of all the work orders here. Go into page 2, and now I can see each work order, the cost summary by work order. So now I can see that I got materials and labor for everything except for I still got to fix my infiltration reduction. But now I have a funding source for every one of them. I've got materials and labor for everything on this work order and a funding source, and materials and labor and a funding source for this one. And then you could also do a quick look and say, well, all of these were ECMs, so did I pay for them with the right thing? I got DOE program, LIHEAP program, DOE program, LIHEAP program. So I haven't made any errors. Everything looks good. There's a breakdown on the economics of every measure, and at the end of the economics for every measure, it actually shows the total energy savings for the whole job, and it includes the total MMBTUs. But I need your help on this one. I think that this total MMBTUs is not what we want to report on the BWR. But I need your help as you guys are running this to kind of verify that. I'll come back to that in just a second. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But this may be the most helpful thing for some of you guys if you have ever had to sit down and enter stuff into the BWR. There's your numbers. You now have all your numbers for what you could enter into the BWR. And at some point in the future, right now you're going to just enter in materials. So those are the numbers you'd put on the BWR under materials. At some point in the future, we may look at changing that to adding a column for labor or just putting in the total. But for right now, when you get to that screen on the BWR and you're just itemizing the cost per funding source, those are your numbers there. But that's what's kind of nice. Once you've itemized everything on this report, it gives you everything you need for that BWR. Also, on the first page of this report, if you filled out your energy index, there's your energy index number right there, or you can get into the audit and find it. So, but when you're filling out the BWR, you can just go to that page and then go to here and put those numbers
Hey,
in.
Matt.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, unless your agency's set up to use those numbers, like mine wouldn't be, because maybe aluminum I paid for LIHEAP, the aluminum duct, but the fan I paid for DOE. So there's actually a combination of LIHEAP and DOE health and safety used on the one fan measure.
Gotcha. And that's, I don't know how to itemize that, and that may be a problem, because if that is the case, then what you're putting in here is inaccurate. Is that right?
Correct.
We do the same thing. Ours is kind of like that also.
Yeah, that's the point of braiding the funding.
Yeah, ours is the same way as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to fix that, but
Just like a furnace, like a lot of our metal, I always use LIHEAP. The furnaces I could use Crisis. The condensation pumps I could have used Dominion. So it's Even a furnace replacement can have 4 different funding sources.
Yeah. I'm going to have to dig into that. Like Brad said something this morning in the meeting where, you know, he basically said as a best practice, you should pay for everything from the one funding source. I want to look and see if there's a way to actually itemize it on this client completion report. And then if I were to take a guess, I'm assuming that it would be a complete nightmare to try and untangle all of that. Or to try and, if you got to the end of a job and now you said, okay, I bought that ductwork with LIHEAP, but now I want to show that I'm actually going to pay for it with DOE. I don't know how simple or how complex that gets.
And one way Ian's able to get away with it is because he buys everything with LIHEAP and then does journal entries for anything he needs to transfer over to DOE.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I've thought about this, you know, I've kind of wondered, what does that look like at each of your agencies? Is it possible? If it is, you know, will it work? Will it just create other problems? So I'll see what I can learn about this. I don't know if there's a way to itemize it on this report either. But I appreciate you bringing that one up because that one's going to be problematic. Oh yeah, let me show you this one last thing and then let's wrap this up. So on this, the MMBTUs, as we started down this, I've looked at this report as it's going to give us, it's going to solve 3 or 4 different problems we've had in the program for a while. And one of those things was it's going to tell us what our actual MMBTUs are, I thought. As I look at this report this morning, I don't think that's the case, but I'm not 100% sure yet. And I need your help to figure it out. So Ian pointed out this morning, like this number here, that's not accurate, and that you'd actually have to do some sort of a conversion where you convert the kilowatts on your cooling and your base load into MMBTUs and add them all together before it would tell you what the actual MMBTUs saved were. I don't have a calculator to do that right now, but I suspect that still doesn't give us what we want. And the reason why I suspect that is this. So I added up, well, if I look at my input or recommended measures report. So go to my audit and preview my recommended measures. This was the example that I used in the meeting this morning, was this page here. And if I add up all of my BTUs here, it comes up to 81. But what's interesting is if you start looking at, let me see if I can get these 2 reports side by side somehow. Client completion report, gosh. And I don't know if this is big enough for you guys to see on the screen or not, but if you start looking at the MMBTUs for all of these measures, so let's go and we want to find one that has, so here's our ash rate, or our infiltration reduction. It shows we have an MMBTU of 4.1. When we ran the audit, the audit told us we had an MMBTU of 4.1. It has a slight adjustment because of cooling, and it drops it down to 4, and that's exactly what I think that's exactly what this is doing too, because it's showing there's some negative cooling costs there. So, but what I found, so if we go in and measure, or if we go in and install any of these measures, the MMBTU is not going to change really. It's like on a furnace, if you're going to install a 95% furnace, the MMBTU is going to be exactly what you estimated. It's like if this was going to make an adjustment, there's really no adjustment for it to make. You either installed the furnace or you didn't, right? Well, the place where you would have an adjustment would be on your duct sealing and on your infiltration reduction. It's like if you didn't, say it gave you a budget of $200, if you didn't spend all $200, maybe you only spent 100 of it, the assumption has been that the audit was actually going to adjust the MMBTUs. It was going to say, well, they thought they were going to get a 30% reduction, but since they only spent half of the money, they only got a 15% reduction. Therefore, we're now going to make an adjustment to our BTUs. And then same thing on the duct. We thought we were going to do a bunch of duct sealing. We only did a little bit, and therefore the new dollar amount should make some sort of an adjustment. As far as I can tell, they don't. As far as I can tell, the MMBTUs that show up on this report are exactly what is showing up on the recommended measures report. And really that nullifies that extra field where we have estimated or the audited MMBTUs versus actual MMBTUs. I think these two reports are going to give us the exact same number no matter what we do. And the reason why I'm thinking that is, so on my audit here, you can see on my infiltration reduction, I had a $300 budget, and it's giving us 4.1 MMBTUs. On this one, I went in and I changed that budget, infiltration budget, down to $0. In fact, you can see here on the previous page, infiltration reduction, we spent zero money on it. And I still get a 4.1 MMBTU savings. And it's because in the audit, I told it that my post blower door would be a certain number, and that's what it is, and that's what this report is reflecting. You guys following me on all of that?
Yep.
So my ask to you guys is to kind of, once you guys have run some of these, watch that and see if you're coming to the same conclusion that I came to, or if you're noticing something different. Try changing up some of your numbers and see what it does. But so far as I can tell, like on any of the measures where I adjusted the actual cost, so let's go to my windows. So I put in low E windows. The estimated cost for the low E windows was going to be $1,740 with 9.8 MMBTUs. Over here, the actual cost was $16.83 and 32 cents, but the MMBTU stays the same. And that one should stay the same because the Windows savings, regardless of what the cost is, it should still save the same amount of energy, right? But if there anything, I can only think of the air sealing and the duct sealing as stuff that would actually change the amount of energy saved. But if you guys think of anything else, kind of tweak stuff around and play with it and see if you can see anything else going on that I'm not seeing. Really, if that is the case, then all it'll do is we'll continue to report the total MMBTUs, but we won't do an adjusted. We'll just use, this number here to get that. But watch for that as you're doing it. So, but I think at this point we've kind of covered everything on the client completion report, haven't we? Like, do you guys have what you need to get in and start running a full client completion report?
Right now, we're kind of going through the transition of getting new contractors for our work. So right now, ours is kind of a mess.
Yeah. Do you guys need anything else from me or from this group? Like, is there any reason for us to meet again, or do you guys feel like now we just need to sit down and start trying to produce these for some jobs? Is that the next step? What do you guys think? If there's anything else I can do to help facilitate something or help with something, I know I have a couple of questions on our list that I need to find answers to, but other than that, I'm not seeing any reason for this group to meet again, at least not schedule something right now. But is there anything else that we could do together that would help?
I don't think so. I think we just need to kind of mess with it, and then if we come up with any problems, then we could reach out to you, and then if needed, we could have another meeting.
All right. If you guys are, reach out to me. If we see anything, if people are learning something, I might just push it out in an email to this whole group. So if you'll kind of funnel that information through me, I can help in that way. And as we keep going, if I see a need for this group to get back together, then I'll shoot an email out and we'll, schedule something. But are you guys, could each of you send me one client completion report by like the middle of October? We'll set an actual date. Is that reasonable to ask by, say, I don't know, Tuesday the 16th of October? You think each of you would have enough time to go through a real client file and actually generate a client completion report by then?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put that, I'll put that down as our, that's our assignment from this meeting. And then anybody, if anybody's struggling with it, reach out to me, but I'll just put on my calendar as a reminder. I'll be watching for those. And then when I get them, I'll be looking at them to see if I can see if there's anything helpful for the group, or if any of the individuals are struggling with stuff still, then I'll work with them one-on-one. But let's do that. Basically, send me one, and you'll need to send me. You'll basically be sending me the input, recommended measures, and the client completion report. And will you also on that audit run the energy index as well, so that so that you've got some experience with that, and then if you have questions on that way you'll be ready for the 1st of November on the energy index stuff also. So
Sounds good.
cool. All right. If you guys think of anything else, just shoot me an email. But let's go ahead and end here. And yeah, this will be our last meeting unless we come across something else in the near future where we all feel like we want to get back together. So thanks for your participation, and I hope this was helpful. And we'll just go from here. You guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.